Right, let's jump straight into this explainer and completely reframe everything you thought you knew about a super common botanical. I know, when you hear the word lavender, your brain probably jumps straight to what? A fluffy bath bomb? Maybe a fancy soap or a relaxing spa day? But today, we're pushing way past the aromatherapy aisle. We are looking at the hard, clinical neuroscience of what literally happens inside your brain when you ingest clinical-grade lavender oil.
So you have to ask yourself, is lavender just a pleasant scent, or are we looking at a legitimate clinical neurological therapeutic? We really need to shatter this myth of lavender as merely a lifestyle accessory. Today, we're going to dig into the hard clinical data behind actually swallowing a standardized capsule and explore how its active compounds can literally rewire your anxiety pathways, completely alter your sleep architecture, and even protect your cognition.
To understand how this all works, we've got to look under the hood. When you ingest a properly formulated lavender oil, its active aromatic compounds, specifically linalool and linaloyl acetate, enter your bloodstream and actually cross the blood-brain barrier. And once they're inside the central nervous system, they trigger three primary mechanisms. They enhance the GABA system, they inhibit the serotonin transporter, and they act as an antagonist to NMDA receptors.
Okay, I know that sounds incredibly dense. So, let's translate that into what I like to call metaphorical neuroscience. Just think of your brain as a complex engine. First, lavender enhances GABA, which essentially acts like slamming the brakes on an overheated, anxious brain. Second, it inhibits SERT. That's kind of like plugging a drain, which keeps mood-boosting serotonin floating in the pool of your brain synapses for much longer. And finally, it antagonizes NMDA. Think of that as putting up physical roadblocks to stop stress and excitatory signals from completely overwhelming your neural pathways.
And this right here brilliantly illustrates its clinical power. When we look at randomized controlled trials for generalized anxiety disorder, the data is just staggering. Studies show that a daily 80 milligram capsule of a standardized oral lavender preparation, which is known clinically as Siloxane, is literally just as effective as 0.5 milligrams of the prescription benzodiazepine lorazepam. If you or someone you love has ever navigated severe anxiety, just let that sink in for a second. A botanical compound is going toe-to-toe with a major pharmaceutical anxiolytic in real clinical settings.
But it gets even more fascinating when researchers increase the dosage. They found that a 160 milligram dose of this oral lavender produced even greater anxiety reductions than the prescription SSRI paroxetine. And here is the kicker, the reason this really matters to you. Unlike benzodiazepines, oral lavender achieved these exact results without causing that awful morning grogginess, sedation, cognitive impairment, or chemical dependency. It calms the whole system down without actually shutting it down.
Moving on to Section 1, the architecture of sleep, beyond falling asleep faster. Let's head to the bedroom and see how this builds a much better foundation for rest. Because we aren't just talking about falling asleep a little faster here. We're talking about fundamentally altering the architecture of your sleep, backed by objective polysomnography and EEG brainwave readings. The data's super clear. Lavender actively increases the duration of your slow-wave sleep. That's the deep, restorative phase where your body physically heals and your brain consolidates memories, which is confirmed by an elevation in delta wave activity. At the exact same time, it decreases alpha wave power. Alpha waves are basically cortical interruptions, the electrical noise that causes those frustrating, spontaneous awakenings at 3 a.m. Lavender essentially smooths out your brain's electrical activity so you actually stay asleep.
And, it's not just the electrical waves, it's the chemistry too. By effectively putting the brakes on your body's stress response, clinical trials show that lavender significantly lowers physiological stress indicators, specifically biomarkers like alpha amylase and chromogranin A, while you're asleep. It actively shifts your body completely out of fight or flight and locks it right into rest and digest, creating the absolute ultimate biological environment for recovery.
All right, on to Section 2, protecting and sharpening cognition, focusing on the arousal balance. The crucial point we need to make here is that a sedative doesn't actually have to mean sedating.
When you think of traditional anxiety meds, you probably think of brain fog, right? Well, ingested lavender actually protects and sharpens your cognition by mastering your body's arousal balance. This brings us to the Yerkes-Dodson law, a really foundational concept in psychology. It basically says your cognitive performance peaks at an intermediate level of arousal. Too bored, you can't focus. Too stressed or anxious, your performance completely tanks. Because lavender safely calms the nervous system, it essentially drops an overstressed brain right back into that optimal intermediate sweet spot. It creates this highly functional state of relaxed alertness.
And the clinical literature shows us exactly how this plays out. The specific compound linalool is responsible for modulating that GABAergic pathway we talked about earlier. This directly correlates to a drop in raw anxious arousal, which ironically triggers a massive increase in sustained attention and cognitive flexibility. So yes, you are way calmer, but you're also much more focused and able to switch between tasks with better accuracy.
And this relaxed alertness completely extends to your memory, especially when you're under pressure. Because it mitigates the really toxic effects of the stress hormone cortisol on the hippocampus, which is your brain's main memory center, lavender has actually been shown to enhance memory retrieval after stressful events. Imagine taking a high-stakes exam or giving a huge presentation. Instead of stress totally blocking your recall, lavender keeps those neural pathways clear.
Beyond just day-to-day focus, though, we're seeing some really incredible long-term implications. Early animal models are highlighting immense neuroprotective potential in the brain. The oil's compounds protect against glutamate-induced neurotoxicity, they reduce oxidative stress, and they've even been shown to reduce brain infarct size following a simulated stroke. On top of all that, linalool demonstrates powerful anticonvulsant activity by suppressing those excitatory signals. The potential here for clinical neurology is just massive.
Which brings us to Section 3, how to ingest safely. And please proceed with clinical caution. Before you go raiding your aromatherapy stash and trying to drink from a bottle, we really need to hit the brakes and discuss the rigorous safety protocols for using this botanical internally.
I honestly cannot stress this enough. Never, ever swallow standard, undiluted essential oils. Those standard essential oils you buy at the store for a diffuser, they can be highly toxic or even poisonous if you take them by mouth. They can severely burn your mucosal lining and cause major internal distress. So no matter what, you must never ingest the liquid directly from an aromatherapy bottle.
If you want to do this safely and actually reap all the neurological benefits we've just discussed, you have to follow this exact protocol. First, obviously, consult your healthcare provider. Second, ensure you are only using specialized clinical-grade capsules, like the Selexin preparations they use in the clinical trials, which are precisely dosed and safely encapsulated. And third, check for severe drug interactions, especially if you're already taking pharmaceutical sedatives, antidepressants, or blood thinners. Lavender is powerful, and it absolutely will interact with other medications that affect your central nervous system.
So, we've journeyed all the way from the myth of a simple bath scent to the very real clinical science of GABA enhancement, deep sleep architecture, and neuroprotection. Considering its profound ability to effectively rewire anxiety pathways, build way better sleep architecture without the morning grogginess, and genuinely protect our cognition under stress, it truly makes you wonder, could the absolute future of mental health and neuroprotection literally be growing right outside in a flower field? Think about that as you process today's explainer. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, stay curious.